There is a world without sky, where the only suns are the ones that life itself creates. It is a realm of absolute blackness, punctuated by the ghostly dance of bioluminescence. Here, mountains taller than any on land rise from the abyss, and canyons carve through the planet's crust in perpetual twilight. The weight of an entire ocean bears down with a pressure so immense it would pulverize steel. This is not another planet. It is the vast, silent kingdom that makes up most of Earth's living space. For generations, we have turned our instruments outwards, scanning the cosmic static for a whisper of intelligence. We look to the stars, convinced that the answers to our profound questions lie scattered across distant galaxies. Yet we stand on the shore of an inner universe we barely comprehend. What if we have been aiming our telescopes in the wrong direction? What if the story of intelligence on Earth is written not in the stars, but in the darkness beneath our feet? Our entire civilization, our history, our biology, is a product of the surface. We are creatures of sunlight and soil, our perspective chained to the thin, fragile skin of the planet. We call this planet Earth, but it is truly ocean, where continents are just islands in one globe-spanning sea. To understand our home, we must abandon our terrestrial bias and confront a difficult possibility. We must consider that our chapter in the planet's biography may not be the first to feature a thinking protagonist. This journey begins with a bold thought experiment, an aquatic Silurian hypothesis. The original hypothesis asks if we could find the geological fingerprints of a lost industrial civilization. We are taking this one step further into the depths. It dares to ask, could an advanced civilization have risen and vanished in our oceans, long before the first primate walked upright? This is not a claim but a question, a tool to challenge our assumptions about intelligence. The timeline of our planet is almost incomprehensibly vast. For hundreds of millions of years, the deep oceans offered a haven of stability, a cradle of life shielded from the chaos that sterilized the surface world. While life on land was repeatedly reset, the abyssal plains remained constant, a patient laboratory for evolution. Our entire recorded history is a mere flicker in this immense expanse of geological time. There was more than enough time for another story to unfold. When we imagine such a civilization, we must abandon the familiar images of cities and machines. An intelligence born in the abyss would not be like us. It would not forge metal, for it had no fire. It would not build with stone, for its world was one of biology, not geology. Its technologies would be living, its communication a symphony of light, and its very consciousness a state of being our air-breathing minds can scarcely imagine. So why has this question remained mostly in the realm of fiction? The answer lies in the nature of the ocean itself. It is the ultimate keeper of secrets, an environment that actively erases the past through geology and biology. The relentless process of seafloor subduction means the ocean floor is constantly being recycled, dragged back into the Earth's mantle. It's a perfect crime, where the evidence is destroyed by the planet itself. Beyond geology, the water itself is a universal solvent, and the deep sea's ecosystems are brutally efficient. Scavengers and microbes are masters of recycling, ensuring that any organic matter is swiftly returned to the food web. Our archaeological methods, designed for dry land and durable materials, are utterly useless here. We have mapped Mars in more detail than our own seafloor, leaving a vast blank on our map of history. This is the journey we are about to embark upon, a voyage into the deepest what-if imaginable. We will be guided by science but powered by radical speculation. We will explore the conditions for such life, the minds that might evolve without hands or fire, and the cataclysms that could erase a civilization so completely. This is not a search for monsters, but for a reflection of ourselves. In contemplating a mind from the abyss, we must ask a humbling question. What if we are not this planet's first story? Our most fundamental assumption about life is that it all begins with the sun. It is the engine of our world, the energy source for everything from the smallest blade of grass to the largest whale. We are, in every sense, children of the light, our entire existence defined by our star's daily journey across the sky. But this perspective is a profound limitation, a terrestrial bias that blinds us to a more fundamental truth. In the utter darkness of the deep ocean, another engine runs, powered not by a distant sun, but by the fiery heart of our own planet. Let us descend to a hydrothermal vent field, a forest of black smokers on the mid-ocean ridge. These are not mere geological curiosities. They are metropolitan hubs of life in the abyss. Jagged spires of minerals, some reaching several stories high, chimney out superheated, chemical-rich water from deep within the Earth's crust. This is not water as we know it, but a primordial soup, a direct connection to the planet's internal furnace. In this seemingly inhospitable realm, a process as revolutionary as photosynthesis takes place in complete darkness. Chemosynthesis. Here, in the crushing pressure and scalding heat, bacteria and archaea perform a kind of alchemy. They metabolize toxic chemicals like hydrogen sulfide, converting the raw geothermal energy of the planet into biological energy. These microbes form the bedrock of a food web that is utterly alien to the world above. Vast colonies of giant tubeworms, with their blood-red plumes, have no mouth and no digestive tract, living entirely on the symbiotic bacteria housed within them. Ghostly white crabs and pale shrimp swarm the vents, thriving in temperatures and chemical concentrations that would mean instant death for surface life. This independence from the sun and the surface grants the deep ocean its most crucial asset, almost unimaginable stability. The surface of our planet is a place of violent, cyclical upheaval. It is scoured by ice ages, flash-boiled by asteroid impacts, and choked by the ash of supervolcanoes. These events are the great reset buttons of evolution, periodically wiping the slate clean and forcing life to start over. The cataclysm that ended the age of the dinosaurs was a world-ending event for the surface, but for the abyssal plains, it would have been little more than a distant tremor and a light dusting of sediment. The immense column of water, miles deep, acts as the ultimate shield. It is a near-perfect buffer against thermal shock, cosmic radiation, and physical impacts from space. A change of a few degrees on the surface, which could trigger a global mass extinction, would be entirely imperceptible in the deep. This creates an environment of profound continuity, stretching back for hundreds of millions of years. It is an evolutionary laboratory that is never shut down and never contaminated. A calm, quiet stage for life's grandest experiments to run uninterrupted. We must therefore reimagine the deep ocean not as a forgotten basement of our world, but as a planet within our planet. It is a parallel biosphere with its own energy source, its own chemistry, and its own distinct evolutionary pressures. The rules that govern life on land, the need for sunlight, the rhythms of day and night, the constraints of moving through air are irrelevant here. The fundamental challenge for life is not weathering the elements, but mastering the absolute darkness and navigating a three-dimensional world of immense pressure. It is precisely this long-term, uninterrupted stability that makes the deep a plausible crucible for intelligence. The evolution of a complex nervous system, of social structures, of culture, and eventually of technology, requires immense spans of time. On the surface, evolution is a sprinter, constantly adapting to the next disaster and often losing complexity along the way. In the deep, evolution could afford to be a marathon runner, patiently and methodically building complexity over geological epochs. The old view of the abyss as a cold, featureless, and barren wasteland is a relic of our own ignorance. We now see it as a dynamic world where resources, and therefore life, are concentrated in vibrant oases. The hydrothermal vents, the cold seeps, the massive food falls of whale carcasses. This very patchiness of resources would drive competition, cooperation, and social behavior, the very pressures thought to foster the growth of intelligence. The struggle for control over these energetic hotspots could have been the catalyst for the leap from complex animal to thinking being. So, when we ask, why the deep ocean? The answer becomes chillingly clear. It is the safest, most stable, and most isolated realm on the entire planet. It is a cradle perfectly designed to nurture a form of life to maturity, and a tomb perfectly designed to hide all evidence of its existence. It is a world where a civilization could rise, shape its environment with living technology, and ultimately vanish, leaving behind nothing but a profound and unsettling silence. This cradle of shadows is the perfect place to begin our search for the ghosts of deep time. The question, once uttered, hangs in the air with immense weight. If an intelligent civilization ever called the deep ocean home, where is it? Where are the submerged cities, the corroded artifacts, the fossilized remains? For us, a species that leaves its mark everywhere it goes, this absence of proof feels definitive. It is the single greatest argument against the aquatic Silurian hypothesis, the seemingly common-sense objection that could dismiss this entire inquiry as pure fantasy. The silence from the abyss is deafening, and on the surface, it seems to be an empty silence. But this assumption is born of a profound terrestrial bias, a prejudice we are barely aware we have. Our concept of a civilization is inextricably linked to our own history, a story of stone, metal, and fire. We search for the things we ourselves would leave behind. Quarried blocks, pottery shards, worked metals, and durable monuments. Our archaeology is the study of durable trash. We are looking for our own reflection in the deep, and we are frustrated when we do not find it. The first step in this investigation is to abandon that mirror and imagine a civilization that was fundamentally, biologically, different. Consider the most transformative tool in human history: fire. It gave us warmth, protection, cooked food, and ultimately metallurgy. Our entire technological ascent from the Bronze Age to the silicon chip is a consequence of mastering combustion. An intelligence born in a world of water would have no access to this catalyst. There would be no forges, no smelting, no ceramics hardened in a kiln. The entire technological tree that defines our species would be a dead end, an impossibility. They would have needed another path, another revolution. That revolution would be biological. Instead of mastering the dead world of rocks and metals, they would have mastered the living world of genetics and biology. Their technology would not be built, but grown. Imagine structures not of stone, but of bioengineered, self-repairing coral, sculpted by controlled genetics to create archways and habitats. Their tools would not be forged, but grown from hardened biological polymers, sharper and more resilient than our early flint. Their light would not come from a flame, but from cultivated colonies of bioluminescent bacteria, living chandeliers illuminating the eternal night. What happens to such a civilization when it ends? A city of stone crumbles into ruins that can last for millennia. A city of living coral, if its caretakers vanished, would simply die. It would be swiftly colonized by other organisms, its unique structures eroded, its materials scavenged. In the deep sea, where every calorie is precious, a dead city would be the largest foodfall in history, a bonanza for an army of decomposers. Within centuries, perhaps only decades, it would be picked clean, its complex forms dissolving back into the ecosystem, leaving not a ruin, but a barely detectable enrichment of the seafloor ooze. Even if some durable artifact were left behind, the ocean itself is a relentless engine of destruction. Our planet's surface is a mosaic of tectonic plates, and the ocean floor is where they are born and where they die. New crust is forged at mid-ocean ridges and pushed outwards like a vast conveyor belt. At the other end of its journey, hundreds of millions of years later, this crust plunges back into the Earth's mantle in deep ocean trenches, a process called subduction. This planetary recycling system has consumed almost every trace of the ancient seabed, taking any potential ruins with it. Then there is the problem of fossils. Fossilization is an exceptionally rare event, requiring rapid burial in oxygen-poor sediment to prevent decay. We find the bones of our ancestors because they lived and died near rivers and lakes that provided these conditions. But what if our hypothetical beings were soft-bodied, like an octopus or a jellyfish? The chances of such a creature leaving a fossil are statistically almost zero. We have virtually no fossil record for the modern squid, an animal that fills our oceans today. A civilization of soft-bodied intellects could have existed for millions of years and left behind not a single bone. When you combine these factors, a civilization built from biodegradable materials, a brutally efficient ecosystem of decomposers, and a planetary surface that constantly devours itself, you create the perfect crime. It creates a great filter, not for the civilization's existence, but for our discovery of it. Their very nature, and the nature of their world, would conspire to erase every trace of their passage through time, leaving behind a legacy of absolute physical emptiness. Therefore, the absence of evidence is not necessarily evidence of absence. In this case, it might be the very evidence we are looking for. It is what the hypothesis predicts. It suggests a civilization so alien that its signature on the world would be invisible to a species like us, which builds its legacy on permanence. The silence from the deep is not empty. It is the sound of a story that was written in water and then washed away. When we search for intelligence, we are almost always searching for a mirror. We look for a mind that thinks and builds like ours. Our template is the primate blueprint: a large, centralized brain, grasping hands, and a voice for complex language. We equate intelligence with tool use, with manipulating the external world. This is the story of the clever ape, but it has given us a profound cognitive bias. To shatter this mirror, we need only look at an octopus. Here is an intelligence so alien it might as well be from another world. It has no single brain, but a distributed nervous system, with minds in its arms capable of independent action. The octopus thinks with its entire body, solving puzzles for curiosity's sake. This is not a lesser intelligence. It is a parallel one, a completely different solution to being smart. If the octopus shows us a solitary mind, the whale shows us a social one. Orcas and dolphins live in a world defined not by objects, but by relationships and sound. They have complex social structures, regional dialects, and cultural traditions passed down through generations. Their intelligence is expressed in navigating an intricate social web and creating a shared acoustic reality. They prove a great mind does not need hands to build a complex culture. Using these living blueprints, we can speculate. Imagine an heir to the octopus lineage, a solitary being whose primary expression is its own biology. This being would not build tools, it would become the tool. It would reshape its limbs to grasp and its skin to communicate, its own flesh becoming a living technology. Its intelligence would be a fluid mastery over its physical form, a language written in the silent grammar of shape-shifting. Or perhaps evolution took a different path. Consider a civilization that is not a collection of individuals, but a single, collective consciousness distributed across thousands of networked bodies. In this model, there is no I, only we. Each physical unit would be a neuron in a vast, oceanic brain, its actions dictated by the needs of the whole. Such a being would have goals and motivations utterly incomprehensible to an individualistic species like us. The very reality of these beings would be alien. In the perpetual night, vision as we know it would be secondary. Their world would be painted by sound, with sophisticated echolocation building a model of their surroundings. They might sense the faint bioelectric fields of others, or taste the chemical history of the water, reading it like a story. A philosophy built on sonar or a science built on taste would produce an unrecognizable worldview. This leads to the most profound divergence. Our entire psychological, legal, and moral framework is built upon the individual, a singular consciousness with agency and identity. But a colonial mind or a shapeshifter that can merge with others erodes this foundation. What is a self when your mind is shared? What is a choice when your body is not your own? These questions strike at the very heart of what we believe it means to be a person. We must also question the trajectory of intelligence. Ours was forged by survival on a volatile surface, driving us toward technological domination. But what would drive intelligence in a stable world of darkness? Perhaps their progress was not external but internal. Their greatest projects might have been aimed at consciousness itself, creating new perceptions or shared dream states. Their greatest achievements might have been entirely non-physical, leaving no trace. Ultimately, this challenge forces us to redefine our search. We are not looking for intelligent life as we know it, but for complex cognition in any form. The ghost in the abyss is not another human in a different suit. It is a fundamentally different answer to the question of what a mind can become. Its possibility forces us to see our own intelligence not as the peak, but as one lonely branch on a vast, mysterious tree. To accept that a civilization could rise in the deep is to immediately confront its apparent absence. If they existed, where did they go? The universe, it is theorized, is filled with great filters, evolutionary and technological hurdles so difficult to overcome that they silence most nascent civilizations. For us, the filters might be nuclear war or climate change. But a civilization in the deep would face its own unique set of apocalyptic trials, an extinction menu tailored specifically to a world of eternal darkness and pressure. The first, and perhaps most terrifying, is a planetary-scale assassination by chemistry. Imagine an oceanic anoxic event, a period where the ocean's global chemistry shifts and the water becomes starved of oxygen. This is not a storm or a flood. It is a silent, creeping suffocation that fills every corner of their world. For a civilization dependent on breathing water, there would be no high ground to escape to, no atmosphere to break through. Their entire world, the very medium of their existence, would become a poison, and their extinction would be as slow and inexorable as a tide that never recedes. Alternatively, their doom may have come from the fading of their sun. A deep-sea civilization, born around hydrothermal vents, would be powered by the planet's geothermal heart. But geological activity is not permanent. Over millions of years, tectonic patterns shift, and the fires beneath the seafloor can dim and die out. For them, this would be an apocalypse of starvation. The chemosynthetic bacteria at the base of their food web would vanish, and the entire ecosystem, including its intelligent apex, would simply run out of energy and fade into the cold darkness. Perhaps the killer was not external but internal, a monster of their own creation. A civilization that masters biology as its primary technology would wield terrifying power. A misstep in genetic engineering could unleash a biological gray goo scenario. Imagine a custom-designed microbe, perhaps intended to break down waste or create energy, that mutates beyond control. It would not just infect, it would consume, breaking down all organic matter into more of itself, turning a vibrant, complex ocean into a sterile, uniform slurry. Their greatest tool would have become their tomb. The filter might not have been biological, but informational. For a civilization of collective minds or one based on intricate social soundscapes, a virus of an idea could be as deadly as any plague. A paradox, a lie, or a revelation so shattering it could collapse their entire societal structure. This would be a civil war fought without weapons, a schism in the hive mind that tears the collective consciousness apart. They might have simply thought themselves to death, their minds erased by a self-inflicted philosophical catastrophe. But not every ending is a tragedy. Is it possible they didn't die, but simply left? The ultimate goal of a civilization that has mastered its own biology might not be expansion, but transcendence. Having unlocked the secrets of their own minds and bodies, they may have learned to discard their physical forms entirely. Perhaps they became beings of pure information, their consciousness woven into the quantum fabric of the ocean itself. They did not vanish. They sublimated, becoming a ghost in their own machine. Or, in a final act of profound wisdom or fear, they may have simply chosen to hide. Imagine this ancient, intelligent presence observing the surface world. They would have witnessed the rise of a new, noisy, and chaotic form of intelligence, us. Perhaps they saw our own destructive tendencies and decided that engagement was too great a risk. In a great retreat, they might have withdrawn to the most inaccessible parts of the planet, the deep Earth biosphere miles below the seafloor, entering a state of hibernation and waiting for the age of humanity to pass. These scenarios, from planetary suffocation to philosophical transcendence, are all stark possibilities. The truth, if there is one, could also be a slow, quiet fading away. A gradual decline from a loss of purpose, a slow environmental shift, or a slide into decadence that lasted a million years. The end of a civilization is not always a dramatic explosion. Sometimes it is a long, drawn-out sigh, leaving behind in silence even more profound than that left by a cataclysm. Ultimately, each of these potential fates is a mirror. In contemplating the end of a hypothetical them, we are forced to examine the potential ends for us. The silence from the deep is not just an absence of evidence, but a canvas onto which we project our own deepest fears about fragility and extinction. The question is not simply what happened to them, but what does their story, even as a fiction, tell us about the precarious nature of any thinking being, anywhere in the cosmos. We have journeyed to the bottom of the world, through time and pressure, to entertain a ghost. We have built a world for a mind without fire, imagined a technology of flesh, and contemplated its silent apocalypse. But now, as we ascend from the speculative depths, we must recognize that this entire journey was never truly about discovering a lost civilization. It was about discovering the limits of our own. The abyss we have been staring into is not just in the ocean. It is a space within our own understanding, and what we find there is a reflection. This thought experiment, the aquatic Silurian hypothesis, is a mirror. In its dark, speculative surface, we see our own image, distorted and strange. We see a species so convinced of its own uniqueness that it struggles to imagine intelligence in any other form. We see our terrestrial biases, our obsession with permanence, our unshakable faith in the tools that built our world. Every question we have asked about them has really been a question about us, revealing the invisible architecture of our own worldview. The search for a civilization without stone forces us to confront the narrowness of our definitions. What does progress mean if it doesn't lead to skyscrapers and satellites? What is culture if it leaves no monuments, no art, no written word? The possibility of a successful, complex society built on biology and impermanence suggests that our path is just one of many. Our history is not the template for intelligence. It is a single, isolated data point in a vast, unknown cosmos of possibility. More than that, the story of their hypothetical end serves as a stark and intimate warning. In imagining their doom by environmental collapse, technological overreach, or self-inflicted catastrophe, we are rehearsing the potential endings to our own story. The great filters we invented for them are the very same ones we now face. The ghosts of the abyss whisper a cautionary tale that resonates not across millions of years, but in the headlines of our present day. Their silence is a reminder of how easily a world can be lost. This brings us to the most profound consequence of our inquiry: humility. We stand atop our food chain on our small patch of dry land, calling ourselves the masters of this world. We see ourselves as the planet's first and only thinking progeny, the inheritors of all that has come before. To seriously entertain the idea that we might only be the current tenants, that another intelligence has already risen and fallen in our own home, is to shatter that comforting illusion. It recasts humanity not as the pinnacle of evolution, but as one chapter in a much longer, stranger book. Even if we were to launch an unprecedented mission to map every inch of the seafloor, what would we truly be looking for? Our sensors are calibrated to find our own patterns, our minds trained to recognize our own logic. We might sail directly over the faint, complex chemical signature of a billion-year-old computational substrate, or the fractal scars of a bioengineered ecosystem, and see nothing but mud and geology. The greatest barrier to discovery is not the depth of the water, but the shallowness of our imagination. Ultimately, the value of this journey is not in finding an answer. It is in learning how to ask a better question. The search for a lost aquatic civilization transforms the deep ocean from a physical place into a philosophical one. It becomes a symbol of the unknown, a reminder that the largest part of our own planet is still a realm of pure mystery. It challenges us to remain open to the possibility that the universe is far more creative and surprising than our limited experience suggests. So, we end where we began, with a single point of light descending into an infinite darkness. Perhaps the question isn't whether something is down there, waiting to be found. The real question is, if it were to look back, would we even have the capacity to understand what we were seeing? The ocean holds the history of all life on this planet. And maybe, just maybe, it also holds the history of more than one mind, waiting in the silence for a species finally ready to listen.